you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely convince you. Yeah, so welcome to the Foreign Policy Review. I am Dustin Pickering, your host with co-hosts CARLO, PARCELLI, and Billy Bob. Today's theme is Don't Poke the Bear. You motherfuckers out there, don't poke the bear. We're going to talk about the Kerch Bridge explosion, what is going on there, what we think of this matter. So Billy Bob, let's get this started. Let's talk about this.
Thanks, Dustin. Yes, there's been a few events since our last week's show. Most notably was when the bridge that connects Crimea with Russia was large explosion there. Big escalation on the part of the West, on the part of Ukraine. So last week we had Regis on the show, and subsequent to that, we had the bridge explosion. We talked about the referendum with Regis, and then the United Nations had a vote. The General Assembly had a vote specifically on the annexation, by the Russian Federation of those territories. And, the results were what they were, but, the West is spinning it one way. Reality is a little bit different. So we had the bridge explosion. We had the UN General Assembly vote on the annexation. We also had the Russian response, the Russian military response to the bridge explosion, which has kind of been, an escalation, right? So Russia has kind of taken the gloves off to a degree, and they're going after, Ukrainian infrastructure. They're using, their standoff missiles and hitting power supplies and things like that, which they hadn't really touched before. So there was kind of a gentleman's agreement. That's a bad analogy, but it was like, you don't hit our civilian infrastructure, we won't hit yours. Ukraine, hit the bridge, and Russia has been responding by, for days now, just going after way more aggressively Ukrainian civilian infrastructure, especially, power grids and things like that. So we've also heard about an extended mobilization. So there's the mobilization of the 300,000 we're all familiar with. But I heard, Scott Ritter and others give rumors about an additional mobilization taking place on top of that 300,000 mobilization. So, all the analysts are basically predicting that, the Kerch Bridge was another milestone, another game changer, and Russia is really taking steps to, to be more aggressive, because up until now, they've had a special military operation with very few troops. It's very difficult to deal with this NATO-backed, NATO-supplied, NATO-trained, fully mobilized, 500,000-man army that Ukraine has, created and is working with. So, it's been a very interesting, year as far as this military operation, and things are progressing, and every week we see changes. So so let's talk about this week's events. What are your guys' thoughts on any of the above things that I just put on the plate there?
Well, we could talk about the Kerch Bridge explosion a little further.
Yeah.
There was an interesting article in the in Gray Zone about MI6, the British intelligence service, being and intimately involved in organizing and helping the Ukrainian SBU affect this explosion. This the gray zone said that they have a special inside information by anonymous sources that say it was a suicide bomber in the truck. It was not an unsuspecting Azerbaijani truck driver that was hit. And if MI6 is involved, you can be assured our good friends at Langley down at the Central Intelligence Agency at least knew about it and gave their tacit approval of what was going on. I have found in the past that if you don't credit these people, say at Langley, you'll hurt their feelings. They have feelings too, and if they're not successful at, killing a bunch of people or out and out murder or torture, and you won't credit them like the mainstream press, you hurt their feelings. And so I think we have to include them in this debacle, and as a consequence, we've had heavy missile strikes. Well, not relatively heavy missile strikes by the Russians against Ukrainian infrastructure. What did you think was going to happen? Now, actually, this infrastructure had been attacked on both sides, mostly the Ukrainians prior to this. I mean, since 2014, the Ukrainians have been, and I shouldn't say because they were bombing, they were shelling fellow Ukrainians in the Donetsk. They'd been killing civilians. They'd been lobbing bombs right into Donetsk city for 8 years now. Killed some 14,000 people, roughly. So this notion of not bombing civilian infrastructure, it was mostly on the Russian side that was holding back, and that was very evident in this last offensive, because the Russians were not destroying at first infrastructure such as train depots where troops could gather and load and shift quickly. They were able to. The Ukrainians were able to make their offensive much more effective. Scott Ritter has talked about this at length, and we talked about with him on our show about that.
The SBU took credit for the bombing right after it happened, right? Mm-hmm. So, and there was some speculation, right? Was it an unsuspecting driver, or was it a suicide bomber that knew what was going on? So I didn't know. So that's interesting. So they've kind of confirmed then that it was, or the reporting from the gray zone kind of confirms that it was somebody who knew that he was involved in a suicide bombing, which makes sense because
the first paragraph goes: the gray zone has obtained an April 2022 presentation drawn up for senior British intelligence officers, hashing out an elaborate scheme to blow up Crimea's Kerch Bridge with the involvement of specially trained Ukrainian soldiers. Almost 6 months after the plan was circulated, Kerch Bridge was attacked in October 8th suicide bombing, apparently overseen by Ukraine's SBU intelligence services. And then it goes on into much greater detail as they are.
There's certainly people that would be willing to, kill themselves for any variety of causes. So it could have definitely been a willing suicide bomber, but I'm not sure. Yeah, from what you read, it's hard to verify, that the guy knew what he was doing. But, quite possibly, for sure, he might have, realized that he wasn't going to make it off that bridge. But on the other hand, he might have just been a patsy, hey, take this over here, and then and he doesn't even know that the bomb's going to be detonated. So a few civilians died, I think a car got incinerated and vaporized with maybe three civilians in it, but that was the only civilian damage. And I guess the bridge is pretty much up and running. I mean, it didn't take long to get the bridge back in operation. Is that your understanding? I saw Patrick Lancaster driving it shortly after it was, attacked.
Yeah, I heard that 4 hours later, the rail bridge was operating again, and that one side of the passenger bridge was operating I think 12 hours later, 14 hours later. So, and it's going to take about 40 days to repair the span that collapsed. That's my understanding of timetable. I mean, it's not an earth shattering. It's in substance, it's not an earth shattering attack, but I think it was like I think it was kind of the last straw. They geared it for Putin's 70th birthday, which is kind of a personal insult. The bridge itself was his baby. He wanted to build it. There was a lot of people that didn't want to see it built, so he was behind its construction too. So
Yeah, it was a lot of symbolism for sure in the attack
yeah,
with Putin's birthday and just
so
connecting Crimea with Russia. You know, they want to destroy those kind of connections.
so the fucking Ukrainians, they got a little symbolism too. Half their electrical grid over the entire country was out for at least a few hours, if not a few days. So that's the kind of symbolism they're going to get back from the Russians if they continue this nonsense. Anything you want to add, Dustin?
Well, we can go into the referendum if you want to do that. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So, yeah, the UN General Assembly had a big vote, and the Western media is hyping the results. It's like I think 143 to 5, but I might not. I mean, that's their headlines, right? That's the Western headlines. When you realize that India and China, the two most populous, countries on the planet, both abstained, you realize it's not when you take into account all the population of the 143 people, 143 countries, that might be like, around half the population. So to just put it out there as 143 to 5, I think is a little bit misleading. But certainly the UN and that vote, it does give good PR to the West, and it's definitely a PR win for the West to present a narrative like it's the entire world against Russia. And of course that's the narrative they love to push out there and disseminate into people's minds, because it furthers their interests.
Yeah, if you look a little more closely at it, the numbers really suggest that, look, now's the time for some negotiations. It's now or never. And I think that may be what's moving this so-called vote in that direction. Okay, enough is enough. I don't see the vote as so much an enthusiastic support for Washington's position as much as it sees it as a look. Okay, you guys have had your fun. We don't know what the fuck you're trying to do here, but we don't like it, and we'll give you this vote now, but you have to come to your senses. I just can't I can't get a handle on it. And I wanted to throw this out to you guys. I've been thinking about it for a few days. One of the things I saw on the Jimmy Dore show, of all places, was that they rapidly, he and the comedian there, I think his name's Kurt Metzger, he and Jimmy rapidly got from the point of view of like Biden is, and his people are, well, Biden is senile. That's their position. I have to tend to agree with it. The people around Biden are just out of their fucking minds. They're just bloodthirsty crazy. But and if Trump were in power, this would not be going on. And I thought about it to the point where I put something up on my Facebook page to say that, look, if you can demonstrate to me that Trump will not cause World War III, I will actually go work for his reelection. If you can show me that that's concrete, I will do that, because I have to, at a certain point, I have to stop worrying about the consequence. I have to stop worrying about the right wing fascist consequences that are going to burgeon in the U.S. with a Trump reelection. And you have to worry about the bigger picture, the world existing for a while longer until climate change catches up with it and destroys everybody. But so I would like to get your opinion. What do you guys think of this notion? Let's speculate a little bit. What do you think of this notion of if Trump were in power, this would not be occurring? Is there any substance to that?
Dustin?
You know, he kept us out of war for his administration. I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, what if? What do you think, Billy Bob? And he did face some peace collateral, some sense of agreement amongst a lot of countries, and I can respect him for that. I mean, he was fairly good at getting some things done. But
I mean, so foreign policy for Trump was a mixed bag, right? I mean, I'm definitely not pro-Israel, and Trump was all in to the hilt, way more than the establishment on being pro-Israel. The establishment, especially the Democrats, they don't love Israel like the Christian Zionists, the conservatives, like the Republicans do. So, his Trump's, son-in-law is Jewish. His son-in-law's father, owns a whole bunch of illegal settlements, in the West Bank. So he's all in for Zionism and Israel, even more so than the establishment. So that's a negative for Trump. With Russia, he was night and day better, right? While the establishment wanted this war with Russia that they now have, Trump wanted to be friends with Russia. And again, is that just cynical politics? Because he knew that to fight China, we needed to peel Russia away from China? Probably. That's probably Bannon's take. Nevertheless, his approach towards, North Korea and let's have peace with them. Let's have peace in Syria, even though he bombed Syria when he was railroaded into doing it, seemingly by his intelligence community. And then it was Iran. He was worse. He was worse than the establishment on Iran. He dropped out of that treaty. He attacked Soleimani, which was egregious and reprehensible. Venezuela, he's worse, right? He said, "Hey, they got our oil. Let's get them." So he's definitely a mixed bag, and to say that he's the lesser of two evils, I think he is, but just because he's more inept and he's not as powerful, right? He's small time. He's not the global establishment. And so it would be great to have him in power because he's derailing and he's keeping the big guys from being able to further their agenda. He's like where's my camera? He's like a wrench in the cogs, right? He gets in the way of their steamrolling agenda, which they're now implementing, and that's why I think that he's never going to be allowed back, honestly. But that's difficult to tell, because maybe the establishment doesn't have it all together, and they're going to be happy to throw it to him and let him take the fall for whatever chaos results from things just continuing to spin out of control. Maybe they've made such a mess that they're going to be happy to give it to him and just to blame him for everything. So it's really hard to tell what the future holds. But definitely during his presidency, they were not letting him do anything, right? So they were blocking what he wanted to do in Ukraine. They were blocking what he wanted to do with Russia. They were blocking what he wanted to do with
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan and also North Korea. He wanted to precipitate peace there. So, it's a mixed bag. You can't just speak in blankets. It's nuanced. It's complex. But again, I just like to see Trump because when he's in there, the establishment doesn't get to further their thing. So they're globalists. So globalism, I think, is the idea that, what's that one guy? Michael Hudson says globalism is just the new term for imperialism, right? And so when you think globalism, just think imperialism. So the imperialists, the globalists, want a united front with Western Europe, the United States, South Korea, Japan, Australia. That's the united front that they want to, employ and harness and work together to maintain Western global hegemony throughout the 21st century. And that was manifestly different from what Trump offered. So Trump offered put America first, make America great again. And when he went to Europe, you saw him pushing his way in front of all those Europeans. No, he wanted to make it clear that, look, we don't need Europe. We see Europe as a competitor. We see Russia as a competitor. We don't have any of these nonsensical thoughts about we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. Like that's not real life. No, we're going to treat Europe just like we treat Russia, like we treat China. And in all these things, we're going to put America first. So, of course, that's a vote getter with your average conservative because they believe him. But again, putting America first isn't for Trump isn't exactly putting American workers first, right? So those are two different things. But it's different than the globalists, than the United Globalist Front that the establishment likes. So the put America first Trumpism is very different than the globalist agenda with the transatlantic alliance, South Korea, Japan, Australia, dealing with the obstacles to their continued hegemony. Anyway, that was a lot there, Dustin. You asked me a little question, and I kind of just ran with it. But so. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the future holds for Trump. Again, I think it's possible that they might not be too, unhappy with just handing him the big mess they've created and making him the blame. Alternatively, they might double down on their strategy, on their agenda, and you might not see Trump allowed to run in the next election. If they do, they very likely will just, make sure he doesn't win it, which they can do. I'm not going to say how, because I don't want to get banned off YouTube.
Oh, no, well,
right. No deplatforming for this show, I hope. Yeah,
what are you saying, Billy?
Come on, let's entice him a little bit just to say it. Come on, let's just say it.
Just say it. I'll say it for you.
No.
But put a bullet in his head. Make a storm. Make a barn door in a cyclone out of his head like they did Kennedy. Okay, I that was, you covered pretty much everything. When I think about it, I go, this is one instance when I really hate to be right. And when Hillary Clinton was running, any white person I know, it was like, well, she's a woman. Women are less violent. Like bullshit. I mean, you got Maggie Thatcher, you got Albright, all that slime. So, but when she was running, I said, I can't. She's a warmonger. She's a bloody-minded idiot who's going to get us involved in all kinds of slaughter. And of course, she failed. She failed to win. And Trump came along, but then Biden came along, and I'm in the same frame of mind, except he's only a woman in a kind of much vaguer sense.
Just curious, did everyone else just get booted out all of a sudden for no reason? I got booted out.
Yeah, I got booted out. I had to log back in.
I had to log back in. I think we must have upset somebody.
Oh, but anyway, I don't know. I don't know what happened, but so anyway. With Trump,
came back in. We were still listening to CARLO talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it all right? Is everything back to normal?
Yeah, we're back to normal.
There's several things that come to mind, and here you have a guy that had John Bolton and Mike Pompeo in his inner circle, and he did not wind up in any major new wars. He increased the use of drones because Trump is afraid of blood. I mean, I'm sure if you had him over your house and he cut his finger on a cocktail napkin or whatever, that kind of aristocratic hemophiliac would have happened to him, he would go into a tizzy. So he used drones. They're unmanned. He doesn't have to think about what they're doing and all of that. And of course, the CIA kept on with its operations, running coups up and down Sahel in Africa and doing all this slaughter stuff behind his back. He had no idea of it. He didn't read the briefings. We all know that. There's a couple of instances, though. Afghanistan was significant because he he thought that was a vote getter, and he was right. I think a bunch of the MAGA people are fucking sick and tired of doing tours around the world, or having their sons doing tours around the world, for this international economic cartel, whatever you want to call it. And so I think it was right there. But the other one, but he backed down. He backed down when pressure was put on him. And the other one where he backed down, and this has just come out, and it really disgusts me, is apparently he was about to free Assange and Snowden. He was about to pardon both of them, and he got talked out of it. And this is where Billy Bob's very cogent observation of what would have happened to Fat Donnie and his family comes into effect, because that's the kind of pressure that they were putting on him, and in this instance to pardoning Assange and Snowden. So, I mean, you can take that as you want. I know if I was in that position, that would be a lot of pressure on me, and I might reconsider. I mean, they not only threaten the principal, but they threaten everybody around them, your entire family. And if there are people that Trump cares about, it is members of his family. So I think that's the kind of the last word I want to say on that. Whether or not if Trump was president now, whether we'd be in this situation, I would have to honestly say no. I would have to honestly say most likely not. Now that's not saying that the deep state cannot go and fuck things up to the point where there's no alternative but to get involved in some fashion, like we're involved now. But I frankly don't understand the machinations. Now it's got me off on other things though, and I've said this before. In 1993, the Project for a New American Century, the PNAC, which Robert Kagan and Richard Pearl and Bill Kristol, who's always on CNN now, who supported both Iraq wars, this warmongering fuck. They had a conservative think tank called the Project for the New American Century, and as part of that think tank, as part of their main position paper, and this is something I actually read on the air in community access television, it literally said that one of the things they wanted to do was destabilize the EU, because as a conglomerate, its economic power could potentially dwarf U.S. economic power. And so this whole thing that the EU is going through now, which I'm panning on my Facebook page by pointing out that every day it's getting a little colder, has been a long-term goal of the United States. So that's how cynical this operation is. You got to keep that in mind. You're dealing with the worst kind. I mean, I'm not even sure we're talking about human beings here, but the worst kind of creation that lives on the planet.
Yeah, Trump early on in his presidency, or even later in his presidency, I mean, he was constantly being accused of treating our friends bad and coddling our enemies, right? And this was always in reference to wanting to be friends with Russia and talking shit about the EU. And for that, Trump was constantly had this accusation. He treats our friends like our enemies and like our enemies like our friends. Like what kind of but notice what happened with the EU. So Fat Donnie maybe said some things, but right now they're actually bombing. We're actually bombing EU infrastructure. Like we're not treating them like they're our friends. We're treating them like our enemies. We're doing that right now. So I think they really didn't mind Trump doing that, and it was like a precursor. Both sides saw the EU as a competitor. Of course, they rhetorically weaponized what he was doing against him when he was saying anti-EU things, when he was muscling his way to the front of that group and and not treating them like friends. But they had every intention of doing all that and then some when they came to power, and they're doing even worse. They're because again, they want a weakened EU that's subservient to the U.S. and that is going to go along with our policies, and that's not going to be friends with Russia and friends with China. So that's a no-go. And so the U.S. has got to stay in, Germany has to stay down, and Russia's got to stay out, just like in 1945. You're going to take us to break, Dustin?
Take a quick break. We'll be right back with the Foreign Policy Review. Don't poke the bear. America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free, multilingual, borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity. And that contact email is aomarket21@gmail.com if anybody's curious. So we're back on the show here at Foreign Policy Review with Billy Bob and Carlo Parcelli. So what's next on the agenda? Why don't we talk a little bit about the new Prime Minister of Italy? What is her stance on Ukraine and Russia and the combat going there? What does that mean for the rest of the world?
Go ahead.
Let me throw an alternate question out.
Sure.
I mean, she seems like milk toast, right? She seems like milk toast. She's not going to shake things up. She's in power. I'm not sure she's going to really be that big of a problem to the establishment and to what's happening. But my question is this. So we have this escalation. We have the mobilization of Russian forces, 300,000. We've got another mobilization taking place. We've got the West allegedly, to hear all the analysts, running out of weapon systems, necessary, weapons to send. They're being decimated in Ukraine, and the West just doesn't have them. Manpower, I think, Ukraine is, a country of 30 million plus people. And I'm not sure they're running out of manpower, even if, 50, 100, even more, 50,000, 100,000 have died. My question is, has the U.S. already made a decision about how far they're going to go in this conflict? Has the West made a decision how far they're going to go? Or, are they going to back down? Like when Russia gets these forces on the front line, when they start rolling eastward or westward like we believe they're going to do, and it becomes an inevitable defeat for Ukraine, is Poland going to be unleashed? Like, what do you guys think is the the decisions that have been made so far in response to what Russia just did as far as the mobilization? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I'd be interested to hear somebody like Scott Ritter. But again, I mean, how do we know that they don't have the industrial capacity ramping up in some place somewhere, and they're getting ready to start pumping out these howitzers, these artilleries, these tanks, and they're right now training another 500,000 Ukrainian soldiers, or if that's not in the cards, like I said, initiating hostilities using a Poland proxy, sacrificing Poland like they're sacrificing Ukraine. Is the West going to just back down and take the L? I mean, I don't know. To me, that's seems a little unlikely. I've been
agree.
watching the West since, or researching, learning about them since World War I, since World War II. They don't seem like they're just going to back down and take the L. But that seems to be the big, that's the analysis from everybody. Scott Ritter, all the others saying, oh boy, it's game over. Russia's mobilizing 300,000 people. That's going to be enough. The West is out of weapons. They've already used all their best trained forces. They're all dead. Like this last counteroffensive was their last hurrah. It's, it's lights out. It's a game over. But are they going to take the L? So what are your guys' thoughts about that? Because for me, it's I would like to believe that, but I'm not sure it's true.
Oh, go ahead, Dustin.
Well, I think I agree with your analysis or your commentary that they're not going to take it. They're going to keep fighting until the end, and it's going to be rough. I mean, they're already seeing a lot of subterfuge, and with the pipeline and the bridge and everything. I mean, I think they're wanting to escalate. The West is wanting to escalate.
Right. This is what they wanted. I mean, were they pinning all their hopes on an actual Ukrainian victory? And since the Ukrainians didn't get a victory, they're just gonna say, "Oh well, we lost." I mean, that seems to be the contemporary analysis. And I think they have way too much wealth, way too many resources, way too much propaganda control to just take the L. They have way too many weapons at their disposal that they're just not gonna sit around and not use. But I don't hear any analysts talking about the Western counter moves to this mobilization. Everybody talks about this most recent Russian escalation, Russian response to things with the mobilization as the game over. But is it?
Well, when Putin steps down next Tuesday, then the Russian Federation breaks up into 30 little pieces. Half of them owned by Bill Gates, then it'll all be over. Everybody will be happy. But I think that when analysts say that, they're pointing up the obvious, and that is it's not to win it or lose it, it's to prolong it. And I mean, the U.S. is not a stranger to losing wars. They've lost every conflict they've been in since World War II, or at least you could say there was a draw, say in Syria, or a debacle as in Iraq. But they certainly lost. They lost Vietnam, and the Southeast Asian War enormously.
Good point.
They've just recently.
And what would be the global consequences? I mean, in this particular case, I mean, we're looking at a large-scale nuclear disaster here, possibly. I mean, hopefully not, but
first of all, let's be clear. Putin has not mentioned the word nuclear in anything he said. That's a PR ploy by the West. So as much as you can give substance to public relations, and you can if you read what's his name, the stuff goes right out of my head. The guy that wrote Propaganda in 1928, Edward Bernays. PR does have substantive consequences, but I think in this case, now it's at a point where it's all talk, and this notion of weapons and tactical nuclear weapons and what they can do, and it's meant to frighten. Meant to frighten the American public, which is easily frightened and gets all hysterical about these sorts of things, which is to the great virtue signaling is to the great benefit of the powers that be, because it means you've gotten over the responsibility of actually having to learn something about the actual situation. So I think that's more at this point more PR than anything else. And to address Billy Bob's questions about armaments. What I'm hearing from the Ritters and the Alexander McCourses and all is that Russia has plenty of armaments. I mean, it's true. When you watch CNN in March, it was like the Russians, they didn't have a bullet left. They'd have to go down to the local, fish and game store to buy bullets, or if they had Walmart or something, they'd have to go buy their bullets there. But that's just simply not the case. I mean, the last 3 days have pointed that up, and I've heard estimates that the Russians could sustain this bombing level, this shelling, its missile level, for 6 months. And in that 6 months, of course, you can make more missiles. I mean, if you have the raw materials to do it. So that speaks to a prolonged conflict like this. Of course, after 6 months of this kind of missile shelling, the Ukraine will just be a cinder. But I have to admit, I don't really know what's going on either. As regards the Poles, I think they're salivating to get back Galicia. I think there is territory within Ukraine that they feel that they have a right to, and after World War II, it was taken from them, and they should be allowed to go back. So that would leave a Ukraine that would be like a sliver in the middle, with Russia around the perimeter to the east, all the way underneath through Odessa, all the way to Transnistria, and which is a sliver there. And the Poles would be in the western part of Ukraine, where Galicia is, and Ukraine would be this their Kiev with their Lvov might still be within the territory of Ukraine, but probably not. Kharkiv would probably revert back to Russian control, but I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but the notion that I guess what I want to say is I really don't know. I do know that I do know this. I do know that at the Pentagon and the CIA here in Washington, they've gamed all of this. They've gamed it 1,000 ways to Sunday. They have so many think tanks gaming all of this stuff all the time. The Rand Corporation, CSIS, all these hundreds of funded, and they've all gamed it, and they're sending their scenarios in. And this is what's going to happen if you do this, and this is what's going to happen if you do that, and this is going to happen. So, and they're all quantified. They're all based on quantifiable materials. So they're all always wrong, and that's dangerous. And so I share some of Dustin's concerns that this could stupidly go nuclear.
How far is the West willing to go? So the context, in my opinion, of this conflict is a precursor to the greater conflict that is going to happen with China. So, Russia and China together are too strong to take on both at the same time. So we were hoping to weaken and destabilize Russia, and then we could after we did that, we could turn our attention to China. But with a Russian victory in Ukraine, with Russia's economy not just falling through the floor, this attempt to maintain global Western hegemony against a rising Russia and China has been counterproductive. And that's what I'm saying. Like, there's still the big problem which this war was meant to address. And now what are their new strategies going to be to maintain their global hegemony and to resist their spiraling decline? It seems that the way we've ringed China with our military bases, we're ready to go after shipping lanes. We want to go after shipping lanes. We think destroying the lifeline through the South China Sea, China's lifeline of oil and really consumer goods, that would be devastating to their economy. And so I think we have ourselves, I got to stop saying we. The United States has themselves in a position that they can militarily, wreak economic havoc on China. But again, at what cost, and what kind of justification would they have for it? So these are things that, you know, they're, like you said, they've got a million think tanks gaming all these things, trying to strategize, figuring it out. And what's interesting is, you know, exactly how it's going to play out. Right now, it seems that the you know, the West, it's not going well for them, right? It's not going well economically. Russia is not losing economically on the battlefield. You know, the NATO proxy on the battlefield is getting decimated. You know, of course, you know, we talk about the land that was taken, but that's a Pyrrhic victory. You know, a whole bunch of not inhabitable land was taken back. But what were the losses? You know, so it's just, I'm trying to figure out what strategy they could possibly come up with to turn this thing around, and again, weaken Russia, weaken China, and hold tight to their, you know, the privilege and power and wealth that they've been able to enjoy, you know, since the end of World War II. Without being displaced by these rising powers. And I don't see it happening. I've seen it as an inevitable. Like, I don't see them stopping China. They're not going to be able to. A war with China isn't going to stop China. It's going to ruin the West. And I think we're seeing that with Russia. Like, the same thing is true with Russia. You know, a war against Russia isn't going to stop Russia. It's gonna. So to me, I would like to believe that it's inevitable, right? That they're just going to flail around, and I've said this. That's my analysis for the past several years. They're going to flail around, come up with these strategies to keep the inevitable from happening, but they're not going to be able to. So what exact strategy they're going to settle on? That's the interesting point. But I don't see they have a winning hand. They don't have a winning hand. That's what I truly believe. But
yeah,
how are they going to tell the story in the end? You know, like, I mean, how they're going to propagandize, like, you know, what exactly happened? You know,
well, when it comes to China, there is a kind of historical parallel with World War II, and that is China's building all of these islands in and around the Sea of China, whatever it's called, Chinese Sea, and with Japan. What happened was the United States began to run a blockade against Japan, acquiring oil to benefit British oil companies, and by cutting off that oil, this provoked Japan that was already militarizing heavily to eventually bomb Pearl Harbor and all the other locations that they bombed on that day. If you read Joseph Grew's memoir in 2 volumes by McGraw-Hill, he was the ambassador to Tokyo at the time, and he kept warning the Roosevelt administration that, look, you're going to provoke the Japanese. They're talking about an attack in the Pacific. Literally, this is well before Pearl Harbor. It's well before these new documents came out. You know, Paul Fussell wrote a book, Thank God for the Bombs, and that's where they got to. They got to an atomic bomb. Well, he was an idiot. Not only his book on World War I poets, Dustin, where he fails to mention David Jones, the best poet of them fucking all. He mentions him a couple of times in notes, but he got it wrong. And so the Roosevelt administration knew that the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor. They wanted the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor and the other islands. Let's not leave them out. They wanted to provoke Japan into the war because their interests, the Dulles brothers and all that, their interests were the economic interests that aligned with Britain, that was a powerhouse in that region of the world at the time, but was losing its hegemony to an industrialized Japan. So the parallel now is China is also the West is losing to industrialized China, a China that wasn't going to just make little finger handcuffs for the kids. Now they're doing, you know what I'm talking about? Now they're doing sophisticated shit. That's a no. As long as they were doing like, cheap, bowls to hold your fruit in, that was fine. But I think you've got something to add, Billy Bob. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, yeah, I see those parallels. Definitely, I totally agree that Japan was, incited. It was incitement, just like they incited Russia to attack Ukraine. Japan was incited to attack Pearl Harbor, and they were provoked. It was on purpose, and we knew they were going to be attacking, and we gave them no other choice. Like we waged war through sanctions, and we started the war. Actual bombs are just war by other means, but economic war is war. So, yeah, as far as China goes, yeah, I mean, there's a number of reasons we don't like China, and we would definitely be okay with China if they were of a different nature. But the nature that China is, they're not okay. We can't tolerate them. We don't control them, right? And that's the big problem. But I enjoy all the comments here. Everybody's is talking about, they're putting forth the idea that, globalism is dead, that the West is it seems like they're in agreement, right? That it's inevitable. The decline of the West is inevitable. And again, what is interesting, what remains to be seen is just how things play out, how this decline happens. And it can happen the easy way. It can be managed, and it can be, we can work with the rest of the world, or we can go out kicking and screaming. I keep saying I got to stop doing that. The West can, choose to go out kicking and screaming and trying to destroy and what others are building. And really, one of the comments, I'm sorry I'm not giving you credit, but one of the comments said, we're just all out destruction. And that's it's we. But yeah, it's the West is all about destruction. We're not building infrastructure in Africa. No, we're not building bridges anywhere. We're destroying things. We're concerned about control and exploitation of resources, exploitation of labor markets. That's what we're about. We're not about building. And so it's going to be a great paradigm shift after we are sufficient. It's impossible to stop saying we. The West, the world will be a much better place after the West has been sufficiently taken down a notch and no longer have the power to project regime change operations around the globe, death squads, narco terrorists, all that stuff. It'll be great when those days are in the past. And we have China and Russia, primarily Iran, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Vietnam. Those are the countries we can thank for this decline in Western imperialism.
I wanted to add one correction. I think I keep calling Joseph Greer. It's Joseph Grew, Grew.
No, you said Grew. You said Grew.
Okay, good. I don't want to make the mistake. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. We can only hope that we're right, and we don't. They don't bring about Armageddon rather than becoming a second-class economic citizen, political citizen, military citizen. So,
on that score, I think they're worried about it, and I think they might end up focusing just on regime change in Russia. And I see a lot of talk about that in the Western press. Is Putin? We're okay. We're okay with everything if Putin just leaves. That Putin just needs to go, and then we're okay, and then we'll stop our war against Russia. But I'm not sure that's true, right? Because again, what would come after Putin might be worse from the West perspective than Putin, but they see with Putin that they're losing, and they know that's a locked door. They're not going to be able to deal with that, and so they're thinking, well, we might have a chance if we can get Putin out. So, but that's not, I don't think they're going to get Putin out. Putin just turned 70, right? So who knows?
Yeah,
who knows what they can do? And as far as, you know, assassination or whatever. But I'm not sure that's going to be the salvation for the West, just to take Putin out, even if they are, you know, are somehow able to manage that.
I think they're trying to clone Yeltsin, though. They got some of his tissue, and they're working.
They would
on
prefer
that.
Yeltsin to even Gorbachev. Yeltsin was the worst.
Oh yeah, well,
A rubber stamp. Right, anything you want, rubber stamp.
right. Give him a bottle and let him fly.
Yeah.
So
He
yeah,
was a disgrace. Yeah, no, I like Medvedev. You know, early on in the 2010, he seemed like you know, he's more Western oriented and stuff like that. But recently with his SMO, I think I really like Medvedev's rhetoric, and he seems like a good successor, hopefully. And he's a young guy. He knows what's going on. He's been around for the past, you know, couple decades, even though he's young. So, hey, I'm not sure if he'd be more of a hardliner than Putin, but right now, I mean, I like him. He'd be a good successor.
well, the U.S. murdered Chavez, and Maduro
Yeah.
has stepped up.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean Maduro, he doesn't have the charisma of Chavez, but he's solid. Like he's been doing good stuff.
I like the way they put Maduro down. He's only a bus driver, you know. Oh, what a low life. Yet here, it's all, you know. Bus drivers are lionized for their nobility, you know. So because they stay out of the action, they know their place. Bus drivers in America know their place. That's my message for this week.
Well, yeah, I mean the labor movement in the U.S. is non-existent. I mean,
No.
there's no such thing as unions. Yeah, he was a union leader. I think a union organizer. Maduro was
Yeah.
as a bus driver, and yeah, the bus drivers in this country and all the other labor workers, we're defeated mentally. We're defeated.
It would have to.
We don't even know there's a war. We don't even know there's a fight going on.
It would have to be a bus driver that had $2 billion in the bank to run for president.
Yeah, that bus driver would get political traction.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So
I'm glad we had some comments. I'm usually too engrossed in things to even read the comments and respond to them. So today we were guestless, and so I'm paying more attention to the commentary. We appreciate, you know, everybody watching and sharing your thoughts. I've done a terrible job of recognizing you and appreciating your commentary during the show in the past because, you know, I'm so focused on trying to, you know, have a discussion with the guest. But no, we appreciate the commentary, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to recognize you guys and to you know, respond to some of the comments.
well said.
Yeah, everybody, thanks for watching. And if you guys out there haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so right now. And just hit that subscribe button and that notification button, and bling bling, there you are. You'll be notified every time we come on. So we also have programs with the Parrot World Inkers Network and Financial Focus University, and the politics that covers New York and beyond. Many other programs at the New York Parrot. So please do subscribe and take a look at those other programs as well. If you watch today's, you'll enjoy our others. So thank you so much for you guys being on the program. Billy Bob, CARLO, PARCELLI, thanks so much for engaging and with this thought discussion. And we'll see what happens in the future. We'll see if we all don't go blown to hell or if we fix this problem sooner or later. We'll see what happens. We'll see. We have a few more comments. I'm going to put those up. Thank you guys for definitely for being a part of this program. All these commentators, all these different comments up here. Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Thanks, and have a great afternoon. And keep watching the program. Thanks a lot.